Okay. The system don't let to share my presentation. Let me try to solve this problem. Why do that?
Hocam Google'da dersi kaydetme kalktı mı yani? O yüzden sorun mu yaşanıyor kaydederken?
Şöyle söyleyeyim, üniversite artık kendi account'ın kendi sistemini kurduğu için YouLearn'da onu kullanmaya başladık. Onun için bazı özellikler, yani bu Google'da kullandığımız bazı özellikler tabii ki alındığı için üniversite tarafından lisansı expire oldu ve üniversite ona geri dönmedi. Çünkü herkesin o sistemi kullanmasını istiyor. Ben evden denedim. Sesle bağlandım, kayıt yaptım. Hatta birkaç tane deneme de yaptım. Ama üniversite ağından bağlanmama izin vermiyor. İşin kötüsü bugün ekran paylaşmama da izin vermiyor Google. Bir de ofis bilgisayarımdan deneyeyim. Bugün sabah 9'dan uğraşıyorum sistemlerle. Bakalım yapabilecek mi? Normalde kayıt alma kalktı. Yani öyle bir buton yok artık.
Anladım hocam, teşekkürler.
Rica ederim. Ama maalesef bugün ekran paylaşmama da izin vermiyor.
Hocam Zoom'a geçsek olur mu?
Bir ofis bilgisayarından deneyin Google'da. Çünkü Mac'te bir hata var diye öyle uyarı veriyor. Eğer normal Windows'dan da kullanamazsam öyle Zoom'dan yaparız. Sadece böyle ders başında böyle aksaklıklar oluyor. Onu çözmeye çalışacağım. Ben yarın okulda olacağım. Birler için yüz yüze pratiğim var. Bir sonraki hafta da sizin gruba pratiğiniz var. Orada ekipten öğrenmiş olurum. Edibe hocanız ve Ahmet hocanızdan. Biraz kurumdan uzak olduğum için de böyle sorunlar yaşıyorum. Öyle diyeyim.
Hocam bizim programımızda ikinci sınıflar için pratik gözükmüyor. Anatomi pratiği.
Şöyle ben sizin çünkü yazın size totalden kararı almışlardı. Yani total online kararı alınmıştı. Yine yüz yüze pratikler ekledik. Örneğin geçen dönem fırtınadan önceki gün başmonuyla alakalı birkaç yüz yüze pratiğiniz var. Ama sanırım benden önce ders Muhammed hocanızdaydı. Allah rahmet eylesin. Hoca da böyle koronadan sonra ve hocanın vefatından sonra birilerinin dersi de benim üstümde tanımlandı. Onun için onlarda ani bir değişiklik yaptık ama pratiklerini çok elleyemedik. Google'dan da bağlanamadım. Şimdi onu çözmeye çalışıyorum. Öyle inşallah ki yani onların pratiğinin olmasının nedeni aslında bu. Planlarken öyle planlanmış ama sonra aksaklıklar ve kayıtlardan dolayı mecburen ani bir program değişikliğine gittiler. Şundan katılayım. Bu taraftan izin veriyor. musunuz arkadaşlar? Sanırım artık bir problem kalmadı. Sesimi duyabiliyor musunuz? Tamam. Excuse me for this interruption. We're struggling with different problems today, but finally can do our lesson. In this lesson, we try to find out different things or figure out different things about male genital system. Look like a female genital system. In this lesson, we try to describe the general function and anatomical part of the male genital system, describe more details about the specific anatomic feature of each part, and identify and describe the external and internal genital organ one by one, include the name of the structure on them, or sometimes vessels of them, and sometimes the innervations of the system. Let's take a look to the general schema of this lesson. First of all, try to learn some information about general anatomy of the system, then divided the system organs into external genitalia and internal genitalia. After that, we talk about a main layer of scrotum and testis, and learn this internal and external genital organs one by one. And in the last part of the lesson, we try to learn the accessory glands. First of all, look like the female genital system. The primary organs of the system is initiated at the level of the organs, famous as a gonads, and emerge from the same structure or the homologous of the ovarian. These are named as a testis. We have accessory sex organs, include a complex set of the ducts and tubes, leading to transfer the sperm from the testis to penis. A group of male accessory glands, we name that, we try to learn them function. And the last organ is the penis, which is the organ of copulation. Let's take a look. Generally, the system is made by different organs. It's started or initiated at the level of the testis. At the same time, it's secretory glands and the organs for produce the sperm. The hormone is secreted by these glands is commonly testosterone, but it can produce estrogen at the same time in the lower level compared to the testosterone. You can see another organs located in dorsal side of that. It's named as epididymis. This long tube is named as a ductus deferens. And this gland is seminal vesicle, prostate gland, bulbourethral vesicle, and after connection, the ducts of the ductus deferens and the duct of the seminal vesicle to each other, we have a specific canal that names as an ejaculatory duct. Ejaculatory duct connected to the urethra in the middle of the prostatic part or in the middle of the prostatic urethra. And after that, urine and semen, both of this liquid fluid, use this common way. But the initiate part of this urethra is only used by the urine, and this part is only contains the semen or ejaculate liquid in some condition, but normally it's empty. Let's take a look to the organs of the system. The system have the two is made of two group of organs. Some of them is seen and seated in the site. We name that as a perineal shape structure. If you remember, we identify or define this area in inferior side of the pelvis. External genitalia contains of the scrotum, penis, and male urethra inside a penis. Internal genitalia is initiated at the level of testis, continue with epididymis, ductus efferentis, duct of the epididymis, ductus deferens, and ejaculatory duct. These are generally named as a duct system. It's start at the level of epididymis and ending with the ejaculatory duct, and have a accessory glands connected this tubular system in different level, but these are named as a seminal vesicle, is a paired organ in the dorsal surface of the bladder. Prostate is a unique gland surrounding the neck of the bladder, and bulbourethral gland is the tiny paired organs located inside a pelvic membrane. Let's take a look to these organs. As I mentioned before, external genitalia are the reproductive organs externally seen on the surface of the body, consist of the scrotum and penis, and sometimes we can talk about a male urethra in this side. You can see the scrotum is the skins that cover the testis, epididymis, and initiate part of the ductus deferens. All of this structure is covered by this skin. You can see the penis, and inside a spongiose part of the penis, this structure, as I mentioned before, or you learned it before, named as a penile urethra. It's seated inside this structure. You can see the same structure in another photo. Internal genitalia are the reproductive organs within the body. For example, the testis, epididymis, and initiate part of the ductus deferens is located inside a scrotum, but another part, for example, the last part of the ductus deferens, the ejaculatory duct, seminal vesicle, prostate, and bulbourethral gland located inside a real pelvis, or sometimes inside a diaphragm, muscular diaphragm of the pelvis. This tiny green ones is named as a bulbourethral gland. You can see the same structure. This is the internal genital structure. You can see them in here. Testis. It's a view of the front of the system. the skins and another organs is dissected surround these organs. Only you can see the urinary bladder because this systems have a nearer relationships and connection to the urinary bladder and urethra at the same time. It's start at the level of the testis, epididymis, ductus deferens, goes to the passing through the inguinal canal and goes to the dorsal surface of the bladder, connected with the both side seminal vesicle, make a specific duct named as the ejaculatory duct. It's passed in the middle of the through the prostate gland to connected with the middle part of the prostatic urethra, and you can see these two gland names as a bulbourethral gland. Let's start by the layer of the scrotum. In normal condition, we learn the scrotum as a specific skins that covered the testis and epididymis and the first part of the ductus deferens. But it's not only a skin cover. We have a different layer in this side. Under the skin, we have a specific muscle layer inside a superficial fascia that famous as a dartus. After a contraction of the dartus, the skin of the scrotum is shrinkage. Under this, we have an external spermatic fascia. You can see it in here. It's marked by a green. Under this structure, we have a cremasteric muscle and this muscle covering by the cremasteric fascia. And this is another muscle layer, but the contraction of this muscle is change the position of the testis in both sides. If it's contract, the testis become closer to the body in the cold temperature, or sometimes it's relaxed and descend testis farther than the body in the hot temperature sometimes, because the testis can form or produce a sperm in 3 or 4 degree lesser than the core body temperature at the 34 or sometimes 35 degree. It can done its function effectively. For this reason, this cremasteric muscle is so important. Under this layer, we have an internal spermatic fascia. You can see it as a blue under the red layer. Then we have a tunica albuginea. It's separated into 2 layers. Tunica vaginalis, excuse me, separated into 2 layers. It's the purple ones, external layer or parietal layer and visceral layer. Under it, we have a tunica albuginea. It's a white or gray thick layer covered the tissue of the testis and sent a septula or septa to divide the tissue of the testis into the lobules. Inside each lobule, we have a seminiferous tubule. And the site for the initiation of the septula is named as a mediastinum testis. Its structure look like a hilum in another organs. You can imagine this structure look like it. And here we have a complex tubules. These are named as a rete testis. I don't like to know all of this structure, but I like to explain that you can't imagine the only one layer surrounding the testis or epididymis. We have a lots of layer organized one by one and separated all of this structure with each other. But the inner ones is tunica albuginea, and generally we can see this layer in the maquettes generally. Let's take a look to another structure. You can see this structure in everywhere or different things on it. The inner ones is a tunica vaginalis, and under it we have a tunica albuginea. Alba is another name, is a Latin name of white. It's a thick white sheet surrounding this structure. You can see the same structure. This sheet is famous as a cremasteric layer. As I mentioned before, it's have a main function into regulation the temperature for produce sperm in both sides. In the dermis, there is a thin layer of smooth muscle known as a dartos muscle. As I mentioned before, contraction of this muscle is caused of the wrinkling of the skin of the scrotum. The cremaster is a thicker layer of skeletal muscle that lowers and rises the testis based on temperature.
Hocam giremeyen bir arkadaşımız varmış da.
Closer to the body in cooler temperature, and in warmer environment, this muscle relaxed and the testes are held further from the body. Allows testes to maintain a temperature about 3 centigrade degree below the core body temperature for proper sperm production. It's so important, and this regulation is the main function of the cremasteric muscle, and it's the main difference between the cremasteric and dartos muscle. You can see this structure. This layer, it's cross-sectioned in this side, or this layer is cremasteric fascia. This is the view of the cadaver. This structure is testis. In dorsal side of that, it's epididymis. Epididymis is the Latin name that means as twins. It's the twins organs of the testis. It's continued superiorly by ductus deferens. Ductus deferens passes through the inguinal canal and goes inside the pelvic cavity. You can see the continuation of these organs in there, and goes to the dorsal side of the bladder. The scrotal skin shows the dark appearance and sparsely hairy. Its dermis contain smooth muscle. We named that as a tunica dartos. This part of the male genital organs is the homologous of the labia majora, and the connection side or conjunction site between the both side scrotum scrotal skin is named as a raphe scroti in the central side. You can see it clearly on real photo. This is approximately in this side. The scrotal raphe, in other words, indicates the fusion of the bilateral labio scrotal swelling. It's the originating or origin side for the labia majora in the female and origins of the scrotal skin in the male. The raphe extends onto the inferior surface of the penis and perineum and goes to the anus in normal condition. Let's take a look to another main structure. If we see the cross-section of the testis, you can define that the tunica albogina that covered the testis tissue is send a septula or septa to the site of the mediastinum and divided the tissue of the pelvis into the lobules, as I mentioned before. What's contain these lobules? Each lobule contain a seminiferous tubules is the site for the produce the primary sperm. After that, they goes inside epididymis, stored in there and matured in there. But the first site for producing of this primary sperm is this side, inside a seminiferous tubule. After that, these are sended after producing the sperm. These are sended inside a plexus of the tubules at the site of the mediastinum of the testis. And these are named as a retetestis. It's a plexus is made by these tubules. And after that, these are sended by the efferent ductules into the epididymis. In terms of the tubule, it's initiated with the seminiferous tubule. Then these are connected to the retetestis and the immature sperm transferred by the efferent ductules into epididymis to store them and help to maturation them. Generally, the mutilation of the tail is added to the sperm in this space or in this organ. Let's take a look to another part. Another part we can name that as a external male genitalia is penis, is the male organ of copulation, capable of becoming hard and erect due into its engorgements with blood. Consists of two anatomic part, the body part and the root part. These are named as a corpus in Latin, and radix is another name of the root. The body part is the part that you see located freely, but the radix or the root part is embedded inside a perineal space or and embedded at the floor of the perineum. Let's take a look to this part. Penis is the flaccid state of the organs. The body hangs free below in the anterior side of the symphysis pubis, terminated in a corn-like enlargement that names as a glans penis. You can see it in there clearly. Have a two surface. This surface names as a dorsal surface, and this surface is named as a urethral surface. A dorsal surface faced anterior superiorly when the penis is flaccid, and urethral surface face to the scrotum and forms the posterior aspects of the spongy urethra in normal condition. You can see the root of the penis. This side names as a root of the penis. The root consists of the two crura and one bulb. If I cut the penis with the coronal section, you can see that the corpus of the penis is made of the three main body. The superior bowels is named as a corpora cavernosa, and the inferior ones, or the unique ones, is named as a corpus spongiosum. And the corpora cavernosa connected to the ischiopubic ramus in the both side, and this side names as a crura, and the central part of the corpus spongiosum is become larger and names as a bulb. The corpus goes anteriorly and make an enlargement on the tip of the penis that names as a glans penis. As I mentioned before, the body of the penis contains the bilateral corpora cavernosa and the median corpus spongiosum. During the penile erection, all these three erectile bodies become engorgement with blood, but the corpora cavernosa are developed in a thick, and the corpus spongiosum is covered by a thin fibrous tissue that names as a tunica albuginea. Another difference between these two structures, except the covering of this structure, is the location of the urethra. Urethra pass through or goes inside a corpus spongiosum and penetrate the corpus spongiosum. It's so important, and you had to know it. Let's take a look to the total structure. As I mentioned before, penis have a root part and body part. It's the dorsal surface of the body. Totally, body consists of the two corpora cavernosa, and below this structure, we have a unique corpus spongiosum. The difference between them is about the covering of this structure and the specific tissue made this structure, and the location of the urethra. Urethra pass through the corpus spongiosum. If I cut the penis by use of this plan, I can see the inside structure of the penis. You can see the central artery inside a corpus cavernosum, and the penile urethra inside the corpus spongiosum. This is the histological cross-section of the penis. The corpora cavernosa is located in dorsal side, or nearer to the dorsal surface of the free part of the penis. Each corpus commences in the root of the penis as the crus two crura approximate each other as they approach to the inferior margin of the symphysis pubis and the median septum of the penis that separate the corpora in penetrated by the blood vessels. Distal end of corpora cavernosa stopped short of the tip of the penis and are capped by the enlargement part of the corpus spongiosum that names as a glans penis. As I mentioned before, the corpus spongiosum is a unique part. If I compared with the corpus cavernosum, expand anteriorly as the glans and posteriorly as a bulb embedded in the surface of the genitouretral triangle, but the free edge of that is make an enlargement that names as a glans penis. Glans penis have a side or is the projecting margin that names as a corona glandis, and below this structure we have a groove in this side that names as a neck of the glans. We have a two penile ligament, the fundiform ligament and suspensory ligament. If I compare this ligament, one of them located deeply and one of them located superficially. The deep ones is named as a suspensory ligament, attach the proximal end of the penile to the body of the symphysis pubis. But the fundiform ligament is a continuation of membranous layer of the superficial layer or superficial fascia of the abdomen. You can see it in here. It's the thickest and attach the proximal end of the penile to the linea alba. It's the specific line we can see in this side. It's approximately, it's the median line of the abdomen. This structure, or the superficial ones, fundiform, names as a fundiform ligaments, connected the proximal part of the penis to the anterior abdominal wall at the level of the linea alba, but the suspensory ligament is located deeply. I can see it after dissecting this superficial structure. This deep structure attached the proximal end of the penile body to the symphysis pubis. Let's take a look to another structure. In normal condition, after a birth, we have a specific dermal cover at the side of the glans. This is named as a prepuce skin. This skin in normal condition, when the penis is flaccid, is covered the glans, but after the erection, it goes back and the glans penis become uncovered. You can see this skin fold covered the glans penis in normal condition. Inside this structure, we have a prepucial glands are located along the frenulum and the corona and the neck of the glands. They secrete smegma, a white sebaceous material, and in normal condition, it's the help to take a different urinary tract infection, or the smegma is make a based for growing a different bacteria in this side, or sometimes different fungi in this side. For this reason, generally, in Muslim countries, it's removed by the techniques. We named that as a circumcision. Circumcision is the surgical removal of the skins that covering the tips of the penis, or removing the prepucium. Let's take a look to another structure. If you remember, we talked about a male urethra when we talk about a urinary system, but and we mentioned that the urethra in the female gender and male gender is completely different. Urethra is divided into different regions. In the male gender, it's start by the prostatic urethra. It's the site, or the initiate site of this organ is surrounding by the prostate in the males. Membranous urethra, it's a 1 centimeters of this organ that located inside a membranous cover or membranous sheet, pass through the membranous diaphragm of the pelvis. And spongy or penile urethra pass through the corpus spongiosum inside a penis. The last part is the longest part of this organ, and the shortest one is the membranous urethra. You can see the same structure in the sagittal section. The first part, or prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, as you see here, it's passed through the diaphragmatic membrane. And the last part, or penile urethra or spongy urethra. As I mentioned, the shortest part is the membranous urethra, the longest part is the spongious ones, and the maintenance of the prostatic part is the connection of another duct at this level. This is named as the ejaculate duct. Prostatic urethra approximately initiate at the level of the internal ostium or internal orifice of urethra, have a 2.5 centimeter length, start from bladder and is surrounding or going through the prostate. You can see the initiate or the connection part of the ejaculatory duct opens into the both sides of the colliculus. This elevation names as a colliculus in this two orifice. Let's take a look to another structure. You can see the same structure. Let's take a look. This is the coronal section of the prostatic part of the urethra. As you see it, this is the two opening of the right and left side of the ejaculatory duct, and right side and left side of colliculus. The membranous urethra have approximately 1 centimeter length between the superior and inferior membranous of urogenital diaphragm. You can see it in this side. It's approximately located in there. surrounding by the sphincter of urethra or external sphincter of urethra. You can see it clearly in there. This thickness of the muscle is external sphincter urethra. If you remember, the internal ones located in there and external ones is located in there. This is the shortest segments of urethra, as I mentioned before, and its wall is the thinnest part of these organs. The last part of the urethra inside a penis is named as a spongy or penile urethra, is approximately 17 centimeters, extend from the corpus spongiosum from the perineal membrane to the external urethral orifice at the tips of the glans penis. We can see the opening of the bulbourethral glands to the initiate part of the penile urethra. It's so important. These two glands names as a bulbourethral gland. These are located inside a pelvic diaphragm, but the canal of them comes down and opens at the level of the spongios urethra. It's so important. Keep this fact in your mind. And the external urethral orifice is the narrowest part at the less dilatable part of the urethra. You can see it in there. If I explain the main internal genitalia, as I mentioned before, these are the part of the reproductive system located inside the body. It's initiated at the level of the testis, epididymis, and ductuli efferentis that connected the testis to epididymis, the ducts of epidydym inside the epididymis, then transferred the mature sperm to the ductus deferens, then ductus ejaculatorius, and then continue to his ways as the prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and spongious urethra to the out of the body. We have a different group of glands, as I mentioned before. For example, this blue ones is seminal vesicle. We have both of them or pair of them. We have a unique prostatic gland and two of this bulbourethral gland. Let's take a look to the testis. And the testis, as I mentioned before, have a different or several layer that covering it. But the internal layer is named as a tunica vaginalis. Tunica vaginalis is covered the testis and epididymis at the same time. You can see it, the tunica vaginalis, this one, and tunica albuginea specifically covered the testis only. The tunica albuginea that covered testis only is a fibrous capsule of the testis, send the septa or septula into the testis and divided each testis into 250 or 300 lobules. Lobules contains 1 to 4 coiled of the seminiferous tubule, and seminiferous tubule is a main part for produce spermatozoa, and it's continues with tubuli seminiferi contorti, tubuli seminiferi recti, rete testis, and ductus efferens. And the first part is this side, located inside a lobule. Tubuli seminiferi contorti. These are named as tubuli seminiferi contorti. This part, or the straight part of this tubules, is named as a tubuli seminiferi recti. These are. Then these are made a plexus of this tubules. This is famous as a rete testis. After a rete testis, we have a ductuli efferentis that transferred the sperm into the head part of the epididymis. These are so important, and you had to know the location of this organ and denomination of this tubules, respectively. After a testis, the sperms goes inside a specific organ that's named as a epididymis. As I mentioned before, didymis in Latin means as a twins. This organ imagine as a twins of the testis, because located exactly in dorsal surface of this organ. The epididymis itself measures as a 4 centimeter, but the length of its duct exceeds from to 6 centimeter, have a different anatomic part, head part, body part, and tail part. You can see the head part, body part, and the last part is named as a tail part. The tail part continued with the ductus efferens. During the passage through the epididymis, during the passage of the sperm, spermatozoa undergo the maturation, as I mentioned before, gain the ability of to fertilize an ovum through the acrosomal reaction, and acquire a motility and the ability to swim in one direction, is the futures that this they're gained in this part, and these are stored in this part. You can see these 3 organs in one photo. This part is the testis. This structure is named as the epididymis, and the last part is the ductus deferens. If we see the tubules inside these organs, the tubular system is initiated at the level of the seminiferous tubules, seminiferous contorti, seminiferous recti, rete testis, ductus efferent, that transferred the sperm or spermatozoa from the testis to the epididymis. The different tubule inside or ducts of the epididymis, then it's continue with the ductus deferens. Ductus deferens is more commonly known by clinicians as a vasa deferens. Enters the abdominal cavity after passing through the inguinal canal, as I mentioned before, leave the testicular vessels by turning medially, past the brim of the pelvis and runs downward to the back side or backward along the lateral wall of the pelvis, cross above and medial the ureters. It's so important. You can see it in this photo clearly. Sometimes during the surgery of the ureters or surgery of the ductus deferens can wrongly close some of this structure. We can't done it. We had to know this cross-section point. This structure, this two tubule is similar to each other and sometimes can wrongly done this mistreatment. Beyond the point of the crossing the urethra, the ductus deferens enlarged and formed the ampulla. As I mentioned before, when the internal diameter of the tube is enlarged or expand in normal condition, that side of the tubule is named as an ampulla. Look like a ovarian tube in female. A part of the tube become extend and the internal diameter of that is increased is named as a ampulla part of the ovarian tube. The last part of the ductus deferens is enlargement. For this reason, it's named as a ampulla. You can see the same structure. These are the ductus deferens, goes up, passing through the inguinal canal, goes inside the abdominal cavity, goes down in the lateral wall of the pelvic, and crossed the urethra anteriorly, goes to the dorsal surface of the bladder and make an enlargement. For seeing the last part of this organ clearly, we had to see the dorsal surface of the bladder. These are the last part of the ureters in both sides. This structure crossing these two organs anteriorly is the last part of the ductus deferens, and this side names as the ampulla part of the ductus deferens. The ampulla part and the seminal vesical canal becomes to each other and unit to form the last canal or ejaculate canal. As I mentioned before, the duct system starts at the level of the epididymis, where the sperm mature and are stored. Sperm gain ability to swim, to fertilize the egg, and sperm are ejaculated from the epididymis. It's so important. These are two organs for store the pelvis and make a maturation on it. After that, during the ejaculation, these are transferred into the ductus deferens. Ductus deferens transport the sperm during the ejaculation to the ejaculatory duct. Ejaculatory duct forms by the joining of the ducts of the deferens and seminal vesical duct, as I mentioned before, transfer the mature sperm through the prostate gland and joins with the prostatic part of the urethra. It's so important. It's the general summarize of this ductal system. When we look to the accessory gland, we can mention that, excuse me, I'm not sure that everything is okay. Do you see my presentation? I'm not sure from that at the moment. No, let me share it again. Let me share it again. Excuse me. Okay. In the last part of the lesson, I like to talk about accessory gland. Accessory glands start at the level of the prostate gland. We can talk about a seminal vesicle, as I mentioned before. It's marked by the blue. This is the prostate gland, marked by the dark pink, and Cooper gland or Cooper's gland, or in another words, these are names as a bulbourethral gland, that's marked by the green. The contributions not needed for fertility, but this gland's secretion coating the sperm and make transferred easily. Let's start by the seminal vesicle. As I mentioned before, we have a pair of them in dorsal side or in dorsal surface, sitting in the dorsal surface of the bladder, nearly 15 centimeter long, blind tube folded upon itself. Its coils give the vesicle lobulated appearance. You can see it in here. The distal end of the duct of the seminal vesicle become narrow and joins with the ductus deferens to making or to form the ejaculator duct. Spermatozoa are stored in the ampulla of ductus of the duct and epididymis, but not in the seminal vesicle. It's so important. It's the gland type organs and not contains the sperm in normal condition. Never in normal condition. As I mentioned before, the seminal vesicle lie on the posterior surface of the urinary bladder, secretes about 60% of the semen volume. The fluid that secreted by the seminal vesicle contains fructose to nourish sperm, substances to enhance sperm motility, is contain prostaglandins, substances that suppress immune response against a semen inside a female genital system, have enzymes that clot and then liquefy the semens inside the female genital organs. The seminal vesicle is a vesicular gland, sac-like organs, and lobulated surface, or have a lobulated appearance, as I mentioned before, provided volume, protein, sugar, and different salts, filled before copulation and empty during ejaculation. The prostate is an encapsulated gland. You can see the dorsal view of this gland. This is the coronal section, and this is the mid-sagittal section of these organs. Have an apex directed downward, and the base that located upward, fused with the neck of the bladder. This gland can be palpated by the rectal examination or rectal touche, and sometimes it's hypertrophied by the age. The prostate gland have a solid tissue mass that encircles the prostate urethra, consists of the 20 or 30 compounds of tubuloalveolar alveolar glands, secrete about 25 or 30% of the seminal fluid. The secretes of prostate gland contain NaCl, NaCitrate, and variety of enzymes. The contents of this fluid that's secreted by these organs enhance the sperm motility and have specific enzymes that clot and then liquefy the semens after ejaculation. This is the image of the inside anatomy of this organ. You can see the different canal that transferred the secretion of the prostate into the prostatic urethra and the passage of the ejaculatory duct through these organs. In this image, you can imagine better. These are the last part of or ampulla part of the vasa deferens, as I mentioned before. The canal of this, the last part of this ampulla connected to the duct of the seminal vesicle gland in both sides and make a ejaculatory duct. The last gland I like to talk about that is a bulbourethral gland, or sometimes it's famous as a Kupfer's gland. These are the pea-sized glands inferior to the prostate. It's small and muscular gland. You can see it in here. Produce a mucus. The mucus enters spongious urethra prior to ejaculation. It's so important and have a main function to neutralize traces of the acidic urine and lubricates the urethra before ejaculation. The neutralization of this space is so important because the sperms inside a semens, if come there before the secretion of this two structure, is dead inside this canal before going out. The neutralization of the bulbourethral gland. It's so important. If we careful, both of this gland, the secretion of both of this gland, the seminal vesicle and prostate, become a part of the seminal liquid, but the bulbourethral gland secretion only neutralized the urine or the acidic urine inside the penile urethra and lubricates the urethra. It's the main difference between the secretion of this gland. We talk about that. Let me jump to let me summarize what I'm saying during this lesson. As I mentioned, we have two organs. In male is a homologue of the ovum, make sperm and androgen hormones at the same time, such as the testosterone. Located in the back, in the skin back that's called as a scrotum. Then this sperm transferred into the epididymis or to the ductal system. It's start by the epididymis. Epididymis is a collecting duct at the dorsal surface of the testis. Then during the ejaculation, in normal condition, sperms stored in this side, inside epididymis, and the maturation of the sperm is finished in this side. Another part of the system is named as the ejaculatory duct, is goes up inside the abdominal and pelvic cavity and connected to the seminal vesicle to form the last canal or ejaculatory duct. Inside a tissue of the prostate, you can see it in there clearly. If the ejaculation is formed and the stored sperms comes up through this canal, added the seminal vesicle secretion to it, goes down inside the ejaculatory duct, then give the secretion of the prostate, goes down inside the canal and comes down and pass through the penile urethra and goes out from the external urethral orifice. Male gametes and female gametes. In female gametes or haploid cells is made by the specific pass through a specific function named as a meiosis. In male, this haploid cells named as sperms. In the females, these are named as a ovum. After making the sperm, delivered sperm to the vagina in the female. A normal sperm have a different anatomical part. It's the electron microscope graph of the sperm. Sperm is made of the head, body, and a tail. In a head generally contain a DNA and something else inside a nucleus and have a specific cap that names as a acrosome is the specific sac that contain a different enzymes that help to penetrate a different layer that covering the egg. As I mentioned before, I can summarize that it's produced inside a testis, transferred to epididymis, and stored in there. But during the ejaculation, these goes up through the vasa deferens, comes and become unit and with the canal of the seminal vesicle in both sides. We have a two ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct transferred this material into the prostatic part of the urethra, and this comes down, pass through another part of the urethra, and become and goes out from the external urethral orifice. It's the general pathway for producing and sending out the sperm from by use of urethra. Our lesson is finished. If you have a question, I'm ready to answer. I have an announcement. I write it from classroom, but I like to say we had to change the time of the second group from the 1 March to the 3rd March between the 2 and 4 because we have a cross section with the medical group at the first of the March. In 1st March, I meet the first group by the postponed lab, teeth and vessels and nerves of oral cavity between the 12 and 2. Then I meet the 3rd group between the 12 and 2 on 3rd of March, and the second group come to the lab between the 2 and 4 hour and the 3rd of March. I send it to your classroom, but I like to say it again. We change the position, or we change the hour and the day of the second group only.
Hocam biz oral kalite labını yaptık ama sizinle.
Excuse me, I can't hear you, İpek. Please write for me. Or open your microphone. We have both of them. If you remember, we have a bad weather condition and had to postpone it to this committee, if you remember. We talk about a normal future of oral cavity, the base of that, the floor of them, the lateral wall of them, for example, the tongue in the floor, but we don't have a specific lab about the vessels and nerves of the oral cavity. We've done it in our next practical lesson. Yes, of course. I write it from the classroom to announce it again and share our plan with you. But in normal condition, we add a lab for the 1st of the March for the first group between the 12 and 2, at the lab for the 2nd and 3rd group at the 3rd of the March, the 3rd group at 12 between the 12 and 2 hour, and the second group comes to the lab between the 2 and 4. No, unfortunately, it's not acceptable. I only like to learn the different future in that region. Not you're not responsible for that lab in your final exam or this committee exam. It's only for you to learn it better, to use a maquette on it, to explain the artery in that region on a maquette. Not for note or gain mark. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my job. Thank you too. Okay, I write this announcement from the classroom to check it. Please check it again, check your group again, come with your group, and don't forget wearing your lab coat. It's mandatory, and don't be late. Have a good day. See you next week. I had to check it. I write it again, and in the same form. I write it from the classroom. It's our last lesson, I think. I think we don't have any lesson in. We have only lab in the next week, but in another week we have a last lesson about pelvic region and pelvic vessels. This is the last lesson of this committee, but I think it's on not next week, the next week then. I write the date and the time of that class exactly. I had to check it from another once. Let me share with you.